Hi everyone, my name is Marco Nilig and I'm going to talk about the receptive macro skills listening. So, my topic is all about approaches in teaching listening, which are the bottom up, top down, and interactive. Now, let's proceed to the bottom up. When we talk about bottom up, it has to do with decoding. Yes, decoding is what you receive. Yes, the input you have to encode. You have to decode. Yes, you have to decode what you receive. And when I say receive, it has to do with the sound. It has to do with the words, to the sentences and phrases and clauses you receive. And so this is what you receive when you are listening to someone. You receive sound, words, and sentences and clauses and etc. So to reach their meaning to what you are listening, you have to decode what you receive. To decode the input, and the input, it can be divided into two general dimensions, which are the vocabulary, and number two, the grammar. So here, as you can see, the bottom up can be divided into two general dimensions, the lexical knowledge and grammatical knowledge. So, you cannot understand any spoken discourse if you don't have the grammatical and lexical knowledge. So, let's start with lexical knowledge. When we say lexical knowledge, this means the sounds you receive, the words, also pronunciation of the words, and you know why pronunciation is very important in lexical, because there's some words that can be pronounced similar but they mean different. So this is what lexical knowledge evolves from sounds, words, and pronunciation. Before, therefore, if you are teaching listening, you should train your students on these three, which are the sound, words, and pronunciation. You have to develop the lexical knowledge and train better to your students on these. So some of the activities that you can use to your students or with your students is, for instance, number one is to tick. Diba? So you might give them a list of words and students tick the words they hear, diba? Or to number, yes. To number the words, for example, this is number one, number two, like they hear what they're listening to. This is number two, number three, and etc. You can also include all some activities like to complete the sentences with words they hearing in what they're listening to. So teaching listening involves training the students on lexical knowledge using these activities. Now, let's move on to the number two, which are the grammatical knowledge. When we say grammatical knowledge, it involves the syntax, it involves the word order, it involves the part of speech, it involves sentences, and etc. So, this what grammatical knowledge evolves, and in here, the grammatical knowledge students has to recognize, okay? Actually, to recognize different things, 'di ba? To recognize persons and kinds of questions, 'di ba? To recognize whether the speak is direct or indirect, passive or active, and etc. And with this, this is what students has to recognize, and it's up to you as a teacher to train your students on this. Well, you should. Yes, and before here you have a lot of activities, diba, that you can do as a teacher. For example, students might listen and pick the time, diba? It is present or past, like that, and etc. And here you are training your student on tenses, yeah, sabi. Tenses, and diba, like you can ask your students to guess the meaning or to guess the completion 'di ba? The completion of what they hear to, 'di ba? Like for instance, you can stop and students think of the completion of sentence, 'di ba? Especially when it comes to the verb or forms, 'di ba? Their conjugation, part of speech, and etc. So there's a lot of activities that you can include to this to train your students, 'di ba? To develop students in grammatical knowledge. So all of this is what you mean by bottom up. 'Di ba? The bottom up, as you can see, as what I said earlier, there are two dimensions: the lexical knowledge and grammatical knowledge, and it's up to the teacher to develop these two dimensions for the students for using these activities, and it's better to use it. Now let's proceed to the top down. Now let's talk about top down. So, as what I said earlier, to bottom up, it is decoding or what you receive, diba? And here in the top down, it is a little bit further, and you just have to come up with the meaning of what you hear, diba? So, in other words, here in the top down, you reach the meaning from what is spoken, diba? What does the speaker mean by, diba? What it is said, 'di ba? What is he said in the top down, 'di ba? In another word, the top down is the deep meaning of the language, unlike the bottom up that only the surface, 'di ba? But here in the top down, it's deep, 'di ba? What does the speaker intend to say? This is what the speaker intend to say. What does the speaker mean by saying something? As you can see here, it can be divided into three dimensions: the context, the background knowledge, and the inferencing, 'di ba? Now, let's talk about the context. So, here, sometimes you cannot understand what someone says by something if you don't know the context. And what I say in the context, I mean, this is where, 'di ba? Where they're talking, where are the place. It can also mean what said before, 'di ba? And also we can talk about these activities being done. So it's better to know these things. For example, two people are speaking in supermarket while shopping, 'di ba? It would be different from the students, for example, speaking in at school or elsewhere, 'di ba? So the context plays a significant important role in understanding this message or understanding the any spoken discourse. Now, next is the background knowledge. In here, it's something to do with the culture, 'di ba? Culture or culture manner, events, 'di ba? Like some kind of events or situations. So this is what you by the background knowledge. And therefore, for you as a teacher while listening or teaching listening, it's better to provide a contextual background for your students before listening. For example, discussing before listening, pre-teaching, and etc. And in a kind of either word map or leading, diba? And this is what you mean by context and cultural or background knowledge. And next is the inferencing, diba? And it has to do with the interpreting. Okay, it has to do with extracting. So you interpret or you can try to extract the meaning from what the speaker said, diba? If someone said, like for example, can we go to the cafe in this afternoon or this afternoon, diba? If the other one responds, for example, I have exam tomorrow, 'di ba? Which means it's automatically we can extract her that the number two, the speaker, number two means he's busy, 'di ba? Or the second person, she said, is busy, 'di ba? Or she's busy, 'di ba? She can go to the cafe this afternoon, 'di ba? So this is about what we mean by extracting. So we extract the speaker means by saying something, 'di ba? Okay, now Here, what you can do as an activity to train your students on this is very simply to ask your students to take, for example, the meaning, what does the speaker intended, diba, by saying this or meant by saying that. So this is something that you can do in order to train your student or interference. Okay, for the last, which is the interactive listening. In here, when you say interactive approach, I mean, this is the two-way listening, okay? Two-way listening, so as you know, that listening can either be one-way listening or two-way listening. And when I say one-way listening, which means I play a record and you listen, diba? That's the one-way listening. Or you listen to someone speaking like a speech, someone delivering a speech, and you listen to that. So that's a one-way. But interactive listening, but interactive listening process or a two-way listening, that means interaction to two people interacting face to face like that. So this is totally different. This is something to do with communication, of course, and this is totally different from one way, because this can evolve comprehension, diba? Comprehension check, confirmation check, clarification, or like something clarification if you are asking to someone like that, and etc. So this cannot take place in one-way listening, okay? And therefore, this is very important listening, and as a way to practice, because this is to put your students, diba, in this is here you can put your students to, in a group and let them speak and one listen to another. Like, it's better to evolve, as what I said before, the functions, diba? The functions like asking for clarification, like confirmation and comprehension check, or yeah, asking for clarification. And it's very important to involve and use the functions, okay? So all of this, these are what we mean what we mean by these three approaches, by bottom up, top down, and interactive. So you cannot teach listening if you don't involve with these three approaches. And if you don't train your students on these dimensions, the lexical knowledge, grammatical knowledge, context background knowledge, interferencing, and interactive listening process, you cannot teaching in listening. If you don't involve, if you don't boost, if you don't enhance these approaches, so you need to. Okay? So overall, it's better to listen, 'di ba? If someone is speaking, 'di ba? And that's it. Thank you. Thank you for today listening.